happening, gang? It's your boy Retro back again with another reaction video. Yeah. Today we got sparks flying as Larry Elder snaps at the race baiting Breakfast Club panel. I'm excited to check this one out because I feel like Larry Elder is usually always pretty calm and poised, but I guess when it comes to debating race and people playing that victim card, he can get a little bit heated. So we're gonna hop straight into it, guys. Check out what he had to say. Make sure you guys like this video. Before we even get into it, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I want to roll to 10K. Yeah, let's get into it, y'all.
Slavery, unfortunately.
That was your response. That was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was
slavery. That was your response. Slavery, unfortunately.
That was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that that was a defense on those who were asking.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense.
Let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. I told you guys that I was going to continue to make videos about Larry Elder because I think Larry Elder's points that he made on the Breakfast Club is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he did very well. They're exposing the lies that are told to us as black people and then perpetuated off into the world on our white and Hispanic and Asian brothers and sisters, perpetuating this lie about the experiences of blacks and the plight of blacks. When I say lie, I just think they exaggerated to the point of making us always sound like everything that happens in society victimizes us, and I don't think that's true.
Right.
All right, so I want to play another clip. This is a 2-minute clip. Like I said, this is the third part. I think we can make like 5 more videos about showing, Larry Elder just dismantling the theology that's been taught to so many black people. And you can see in their eyes that they're exhausted at the truth. Like they can't rebut nothing he's saying. Now, the one woman who's completely a narcissist, in my opinion, she's the only one really trying to combat him. They are seeing these facts and it's slapping them across the face. But the woman she's just so bent on just being right that she can't hear nothing. Roll the clip.
What's your thoughts with Florida? And you see that they're trying to take our history out of these history books and not trying to teach our history. What's your thoughts? I find it interesting that the Democrats are the ones complaining about Florida. This is a party of slavery, party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK, the party of the Southern Manifesto, the party of Dred Scott, the party that I said earlier destroyed the nuclear intact family, and the party that is opposing school choice. And now they want to lecture Florida on making sure the proper history of slavery is taught. I don't know anybody who's defending slavery. Anybody. Not Ron DeSantis. He's not defending.
People benefited from slavery.
Actually, you're talking about one line. You're talking about one line in about 127 pages of the study. And it is a line that was repeated almost verbatim in the associated in the advanced placement African American course that the DeSantis administration refused to use because of all of the sexual stuff that was in it. It's basically the same thing that was in the advanced placement African American courses, and now because it's in that, all of a sudden the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
It's more. I just want to make a comment. The first thing that he said is nobody's defending slavery. Another thing that I forget his name. It's Charlemagne DJ Envy, I think his name is. He's tried to say that Ron DeSantis is taking black history out of the schools. It's just not happening. They're just trying to make sure that we're teaching correct history. We're not teaching biased history to make kids hate each other and that everything was about the plight of black people. Slavery had nothing to do with black people in America. It didn't. Were there things that spun from the viewpoint of enslaving blacks, certain stereotypes, certain behaviors? Yes, it did. But slavery wasn't about black people. It was about the availability of cheap labor. They tried to enslave white people. They tried to enslave the natives. They couldn't keep natives because natives had a language and they also knew the terrain. So in the middle of the night, they gone. You can't hold them down. They were self-sustainable on the land. So what did they do? How can they get cheap labor? They went to black people who were enslaving other black people, and they purchased those slaves from black people who had enslaved their own people, and that began to be the prominence of black slaves here in America. But most of the slaves didn't even come here. They went to South America. All right, let me let him finish.
What did you think about that?
Well, sir, you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two very different things. Slavery, unfortunately.
That was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that was a defense on those who.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense. Unfortunately, slavery has been part and parcel of human history from the very beginning. Asians enslaved Asians, whites enslaved whites, blacks enslaved blacks, Native Americans enslaved Native Americans. This is a culture, the Western civilization, that had a revulsion against it. We had a civil war against it. And we ought to applaud ourselves for doing something about this. This is a flawed country. It's moving forward. It's becoming more perfect all the time. Today, if you are born and raised in America, if you finish high school, presumably one where you can read, write, and computer grade level, which is why I support school choice. Don't have a kid before you're 20. Get married first. Get a job. Keep a job. Don't quit it until you get another job. And avoid the criminal justice system. You will not be poor. And if you don't follow that formula, there's a good chance you will be.
Ding, 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 ding. I mean, what can they say about what the elder has said? You know, I didn't hear the whole conversation because I'm just kind of getting the best pieces out of it. But I feel like Charlemagne, DJ Envy are both at least listening, because these truth bombs are slapping them across the head. And as a man, and this is the flaws that some women have, not all, some women, is that as a man, logic permeates more than emotionalism. So if you hear the man speaking logic, you start to sit back and say,
that's facts. You can't debate that.
Presenting facts that I cannot disprove.
Right.
They make sense to me. Logically, Larry Elder probably needs to continue to speak and let me be quiet and listen to him and hear him out, because I'm starting to think about the things he's saying. Women, on the other hand, not all, but some, this one in particular, they don't hear facts. They hear emotions. She's getting emotionally invested that this man is debunking who she claimed to be. She can't hear anything he's saying.
Right.
And that's why he said, she goes, some people would see that as you supporting slavery. He goes, no, you would see that. Charlemagne didn't say it. DJ Envy didn't say it. She sees it as him defending. And he's not defending slavery. It is true, slavery was legal. You know, just because now we realize that it was barbaric to be legal, you can't be retroactive in prosecution. Marijuana usage in many states were illegal. I mean, it was illegal. And now, in some states, they have now passed laws that you can use it for recreational purposes. Do you now go back and free everybody that went to jail for weed? That's not the way things work. You know, Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in there, or coca leaf, from the coca leaf. I think it was, maybe they made it to cocaine. I don't know. It was highly addictive and they had to remove it from Coca-Cola. Do you go back and prosecute them because they did? No, it's because when technology advanced, we realized some of these things were probably not healthy for you. All of the above, then you have to proceed from that point moving forward. The same thing with our country. It was legal all across the world to enslave people. Yeah, now we look back on it and say, how could people possibly do that? I remember when electric chair was a form of not corporal punishment, but a form of execution. Electric chair. And before the electric chair, and they put the sheet over your eyes, the eyeballs used to pop out people's head. And so they realized, oh, that's kind of gruesome. So they put a sheet over your eyes, and then they shock you to death and through electrocution. And now looking back on it, I don't even think they electrocute people anymore. That is now deemed inhumane. So do you go back and arrest the ancestors? You know, your ancestors passed a bill that allowed us to put people in an electric chair. Now everybody from that point on should be subservient to criminals because they stop it. Y'all doing too much, man. It was legal. You got young people growing up in a time where it was legal. How do you blame a white kid when their parents are showing them people getting lynched and that black people were property? How do you expect them to think any different?
Right.
You're a mindless person if you cannot see the conundrum that occurred with the legal process. Slavery was legal. So people were legally enslaving people. And therefore, that what comes with that was other people begin to normalize it. Why would you believe that this person is anything more than a slave or subhuman? because that's what you were raised to believe. It was legal to believe that. Everything pointed in the direction that was normalized. And people began to grow out of it. Can we give people grace that they were able to grow out of something that was barbaric? Go back to Jesus' day. They used to crucify people, put them on a cross, almost beat them to death, poke them in the side, let them bleed out, and then let the fowls of the air consume their carcass in front of the world. They used to let him hang. If it wasn't for the apostles taking Jesus and trying to give him a proper burial, Jesus would have been sitting up there on the cross and people would have been seeing his flesh getting eaten by birds. That's what crucifixion was. Was that barbaric? Beheadings. Was that barbaric? Stoning people to death. That was in the Bible, biblical days. Our faith come from times where they stoned people. So now Jesus and all the apostles and everybody of the Jewish faith should now be demonized forever. I mean, come on, y'all got to stop that, man. I think that over time people begin to realize that we've progressed in the way we think. There's other ways to do things other than stoning people to death. There's other forms of punishment. And even in the future, 50 years, 60 years from now, lethal injection may be deemed as heretical. So I just think that we should be cognizant in our labeling approach. And the reason why Larry Elder and others are saying the things that he's saying is because at some point we have to view these things from a factual basis to move forward. The reason why black people are so still hurt over it, because we're being taught that slavery was all about black people.
It's personal.
Slavery was about the plight of black people and the enslavement and hatred and evilness of black people. That's where it started from, and that's what it always was. And that wasn't really true. Not all black people that lived in what we now know as the continental United States of America were slaves. Many of them were free. Many of them were indentured servants. Many of them who were slaves bought their freedom. They were free in the South, and some of them owned slaves. So if you paint the picture properly, people can overcome. When you realize that the Democrat Party was the party of KKK and Jim Crow, then you would realize that well maybe this is why our conditions haven't changed, because they've been this way from the past and they're still doing it in the future. Maybe we should learn from it instead of lying about the past, saying the party switch and people don't know how to read it in the future. Anyway, I can talk about this for 100 more years. Like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next one.
Yo, that was Officer Tatum. Forgot to give him big shout outs to Officer Tatum, man. Always providing us very educational information. I feel like he broke that down quite well, man. You cannot pigeonhole people today for the things that ancestors did when it was legal. This was, it's unfortunate to say, and I feel like a lot of black people don't want to hear it, but slavery was legal back then. So we cannot come and 100 years later, over 100 years later, and try to seek revenge or reparations. Who is going to repay us? Who are we seeking that repayance from? Because the people who enslaved us are now dead and gone for generations and generations now. So it just doesn't make sense for us to keep trying to teach this emotional hate and to kind of root this separation in our children. I feel like we should teach our children that, yes, this happened, but we cannot, blame our white counterparts or our white neighbor because his ancestors of his ancestors of his ancestors, had slaves or owned slaves. It just doesn't make sense. He personally, he's never seen a slave, owned a slave, or even thought about enslaving anyone. So how are we going to hold him to that same accountability as his ancestors? I feel like we have to at some point let it go so that we can move forward. Never forget, but let it go. You know what I mean? It just makes the most sense. Yo, that was Larry Elder snapping at race baiting Breakfast Club panel. Yo, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel on the road to 10K. I'll catch you guys on the next one.